This is Let's Talk Teens, a parenting podcast sharing tips on raising amazing teenagers. We are both certified life coaches that have worked with teenagers as coaches, mentors, and teachers. We are sharing what we have found to work best when dealing with teens and tough issues. This is Let's Talk Teens with Abbi and Cheree, episode 25, How to Help Your Teen Out of Overwhelm.
How many of you have teenagers that feel overwhelmed? I hope you're all raising your hand or saying, "Oh, I do," because even as adults, we feel overwhelmed, right, Abby? We just feel overwhelmed. And that's just because we have a negative bias brain. We have this brain that is going to constantly tell us what's going wrong, what could happen, what we need to do. Our brain doesn't naturally spiral up and tell us all the ways we're succeeding and everything we're going to get done and all that we're going to accomplish and that everything's going to work out fine. It goes right to the problems. So we have that. We have that negative bias brain. It's common, oh, so common to feel overwhelmed as adults. And, our teens definitely are going to feel that. So I think just first of all, being like, okay, this is normal. Nothing has gone wrong. I love that. Nothing has gone wrong. I always love to remember that with life. Um, a few things I think that would be really helpful to help your teen get out of overwhelm is, first of all, to help them get it out of their head. It's so important when we're in overwhelmed, those thought patterns and that rumination and those thought spins and overthinking just go, 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 go. And we have to stop that. When that's going, we have to figure out a way to stop it. And there's a few things I thought of that can really help us to help get it out of our heads. And I don't know about you, Abby, but I'm a list writer. I like to write it all down, all the things that I need to do, right? All the things. And if I can write it all down, it's out of my head. And then it feels just so good to check it off my list. And I think probably us moms and maybe even the dads all do that. I think moms probably do it more than dads. But I think it's something to teach our teenagers. And I know they have everything on their phones, but still put it on their notes in their phone, but have it so it gets out of their head.
I am just nodding yes to this because there's actual such science behind writing things down. And what's amazing is just speaking personally, I do run off of the list on my phone. That is like where my to-do list lives. But I've noticed that I actually feel more calm and settled when I've written it on a physical sheet of paper. And I think this goes down to just proving to my brain I don't have to hold on to or remember it because I've actually written it down. And I'll have my clients all the time start keeping a journal. And they always think they're like, ugh, I don't need to remember this details, or none of my kids are going to want to read my journal. And I'm like, guys, this journal is not for anybody, like ever to read except for you to write down those thoughts, those feelings, those ideas that you have. Because if not, it's like we've got a ping pong ball endlessly bouncing around in our brain. And when we write it down and we tether those thoughts to a piece of paper, it's literally giving our brain permission to not think about those things anymore because I've got it written down, right? And I can come back and revisit it when I need to. And so, dear brain, you do not need to keep worrying or spinning about this because I have it written down.
Yeah, and if you have it written down, it's like a computer or on your phone where you can close down the programs or, close or swipe the apps and get, like you don't have to be in the app. And then everything functions better on the computer, on your phone, when you have so many apps open or so many programs open. And it's the same thing with our brain. Our brain's actually going to function better. We're going to have a clear mind if it's just out of our head and not just swirling. So I love writing it down. The other thing is just talking about it. And this is really important as a parent to just hold space for our children when they need to talk about it and be really cautious not to be like, oh, don't be overwhelmed or why are you so stressed or try to convince them out of what they're experiencing and feeling. And we've probably talked about this before, but I think it's really important for our teens to say, I feel overwhelmed because, and then share why they feel overwhelmed. And I know we've said this before, and I just want to reiterate it, but neuroscientists have found that when we say what we're feeling, like I feel overwhelmed and this is why, it decreases by 50% that intensity of that emotion in our body. So overwhelmed is going to decrease by 50% just by saying, I feel overwhelmed because, and all the reasons. And it hasn't been solved yet, but just stating what we're feeling and experiencing and why helps lessen the intensity of that.
Now, you might have your teens say to you, or I say this to myself, like, I don't know why I feel overwhelmed. Like I just do, right? I don't even know why. And then it makes me feel worse because then I feel like I don't even have a reason for feeling this way. But what has helped me and what helps my clients is I say, well, let's just write down, I'm going to put a timer for 5 minutes and I just want you to brain dump what is on your brain, right? And will write it down. And I'm always shocked what bubbles up, right? And then I have my clients read it back to me and they go, well, I guess I'm stressed about my Spanish test. And, my friend Sarah, she didn't text me back, right? Like, and all of a sudden, all these things pop up, and we go, oh, do you see here how there were some really buried worries that have been bugging you all day? Like, so when we say, I just don't know why I'm overwhelmed, there's always something. And it might even be like, okay, I'm on my period and I'm emotional right now, or I didn't get enough sleep last night. And so I'm not at my full capacity, right? And so just taking a minute when we get that, I don't know why, and just saying, okay, well, let's just brain dump for a minute. You can find a couple reasons and it will just kind of help calm that feeling of what's wrong with me. Oh, yeah, I have a lot going on.
And I think as parents, when they're doing that brain dump to us and we're listening, I think it's really important to validate it. Not try to fix it at first, but just validate, oh, that makes so much sense why you're feeling overwhelmed. I would too. I would feel overwhelmed too. Oh, I hate that feeling. I hate feeling overwhelmed. And then we can show that confidence of like, oh, I'm sure you're going to figure this out. Is there anything I can do to help you? But really validate what they're experiencing first. I think that's so important. I think helping our teens figure out what is in their control and what are the uncontrollables, right? If we're feeling overwhelmed, it's easy to be thinking of all the things, but if we can zero in on, okay, what's in my control? What is something I can do something about? What is the one thing I need to attack or address right now that I can control? And then it again starts to decrease that overwhelm because I have an action item. I have something I can do to decrease the overwhelm. I know what is in my control, and I can start to prioritize what's most important here and what isn't. And I can work on those things that are most important first.
Anxiety always lives in the future, right? And
Yep.
actually, when we focus in on, okay, what can I do today, right now? Can I work on my assignment? Can I call this friend? Can I go for a walk, right? Like when we take action in the present moment, then we can diminish and get a hold of that anxiety because anxiety just lives in the future and saying, look, what about this? What about this? And oh my goodness, you didn't think about this horrible thing, right? And so always constantly bringing them back um, to the present. And maybe part of that, if your teen is really upset and overwhelmed, and speaking from my own experience here, they might need to change their state. I get that term from Tony Robbins, and he says, you might need to go on a walk before you can decide some present actions, right? Before we can actually clear our brain enough to go, oh, okay. Well, I'm just upset because I haven't worked on my English. I better go work on my English assignment, right? So they might need a change of state. They might need a reminder of, hey, it's time to go to bed, right? I said that to my 5-year-old the other night. He was just sad. And I kept as a mom in my head, I was like, what have I done? Why are his feelings hurt? My house must be so horrible that he just wants to cry. And then I looked at the clock and I went, oh, it's 30 minutes past his bedtime. Like he's tired. He just needs to go to bed. And so I gave him a big hug and I said, guess what? Mommy gets sad at night too. Like I just do. So it's time to go to bed. And so sometimes we got to change the state. We got to come back to it. Um, we got to break them out of maybe a pattern of getting overwhelmed and then come back to some ideas like you were suggesting.
Oh, I just 1,000% agree with that. And sleep, especially, everything is more overwhelming when we're lacking in sleep, right? So sleep. Your teenager needs sleep. The last one I just thought of that is really important is just to help our teen realize they can recruit help. When they're feeling overwhelmed, it is strong, not weak, to ask for help and say, okay, who's on my team here? I have this big project done. Who's on my team that I can recruit? Well, maybe it's a classmate, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's my mom, maybe it's my dad, maybe it's my siblings. maybe it's my teacher, but who are these people who are willing to help me on this right now? And knowing that, like, we all have a team. We all have people who care about us and want to help us. And asking for that help is such a benefit for that overwhelmed brain because we don't have to do it alone. When we're doing anything alone, it feels so much bigger.
And your teen is going to tell you that they're so alone, and your heart's going to break a little because you're like, I'm sitting right here. I've only given birth to you. I've only loved you, your whole life. And so reminding them, right, that they have so many people cheering for them. And guess what? You're going to have to remind them a million times over, because that is just not how our brain is wired to think, oh, let me think of all the people who love me right now, right? That's just not how our brain goes. So just know, hey, part of my job is to remind them I'm here, I'm on their team, and let me remind them of all the people that love them.
And they for sure are going to say something like, oh, they don't want to help me, or I don't want your help, or something in that moment because they're feeling so overwhelmed. I mean, not for sure they can say that, but likely, right? And they're going to kind of push back. But you teaching them that, gosh, if you need help, I'm here. And then letting them kind of mull that over. Or you've got so many people that help you, and they're like, no, I have no one that helps me. And then just kind of let them mull it over. They'll come around to it. Just be patient.
Hey, well, parents, we hope that this helps you out, and we cannot wait for you to join us in our next episode where we talk about how to help your teen feel more confident. Thank you for listening to Let's Talk Teens with Cheree Murdock and Abbi Winslow. If you are looking for more tips to help your teenager, here's where you can find us. You can find Cheree Murdock on Instagram at Cheree Murdock Coaching, or on her website, ChereeMurdock.com. You can find me, Abbi, on Instagram as Abbi Winslow, or on my website, AbbiWinslow.com. Please rate and review our podcast and share with a fellow parent. Thanks for listening.